So you're looking to find out a little bit more about the CII R03 Personal Taxation Exam. I've completed 4 of the 6 RO exams so far, RO1, RO2, now 3 and 5, and of those 4, RO3 was definitely the hardest, both on the day of the exam sitting, and it felt like it was hard in the run up to it, and I had to spend maybe a little bit more time than usual studying for it. And I'll also go over exactly what I did study wise. I'll break it up into 3 separate blocks. The first section, you could spend, say, about a week on that. You could spend 2 weeks on it. It's really up to you. But I split it into 3 blocks, right, like that, rather than, say, week 1, week 2. I'll look at the cost of each of them individually. I'll total it up as I go through. I'm going to tell you guys what to change compared to the studying that I've been doing before for the other exams. There's one thing that I would take out, and there's one new thing that I would add in, particularly in block 3. But without further ado, let's get into it. First of all, just a brief overview of the Personal Taxation R03 exam. It is hard. So I have passed this one first time, thankfully, although it was a very close pass. Now, this exam, I'm told, like a lot of the level 4 exams, which is most of the RO exams, the only one that's not level 4 one is R05, that is level 3. It just means it's supposed to be a little bit easier. This exam was kind of tough. There's an hour for it, so you get 50 questions. It's like all the 1 hour exams. However, I ended up finding that I was using basically the whole time, and when I was going through a number of the mock papers, bearing in mind that when I was doing the mock papers, I didn't quite know as much as I did on the exam date, that I actually went over the time on one of the occasions, whereas in all the other exams it's been absolutely fine. Time has not been an issue whatsoever. This one it was. But the pass mark, because it's 65% and there's 50 questions, it means each question would be worth 2%, so really the pass mark is 66. But when I got my mark back, it showed me my mark and the required pass mark. The required pass mark was actually 32%. Sorry, 32 out of 50, which means it's 64%. So that made me feel a touch better. There's a few more calculations. That's not really why. It just seems to be less of what you might know about before coming into the exam. I felt like, especially with something like R01, maybe a little bit R05, I knew a little bit about what they were talking about when they started to go into the nitty gritty of those specific exams. But with this one, personal taxation, you think, oh well, I know about income tax and I know about the tax band and things like that, and they go into a lot more detail. For these exams, it's a little bit like they'll train you to know more than you'll need to know, presumably as a financial advisor, but that's just what we need to do to pass these exams. I did, again, sit it online rather than in person. Again, when I was going through the exam bookings, there wasn't really many options to sit it in person the way I've done once before. And when you know that when you go through the in-person exam and they check, like an actual physical person comes up to the screen when you sat down at the table and you've finished, and you're like, hands up, I'm done, and they come and check whether or not you've been given the pass or the fail, that's kind of off-putting. So when you go through the exam, whether it be online or in person, it'll also be on a computer anyway, and they'll just tell you right there and then, once you've gone through it all, pass or fail. It won't give you a mark until a few days later, and even then the feedback that you get will just be like, you got 8 out of 10 in this module, you got 4 out of 5 in this module, and that's it. They don't go any more specifics into the questions, so the feedback isn't particularly great, but I guess they can't really give you the questions because those are the questions they use for the exams. You get given 50 questions out of a huge bank of questions that they could potentially use for that exam, or 100 if it was an 100 question exam. If we go on to the CII R03 paper, it tells us a few basics. It's 50 study hours. That's so vague. I don't know how many study hours I spent, I just know how much I did for the previous ones, and I did a little bit more for this. Additionally, for this exam, because time is such an issue, it is definitely worth having a physical calculator when you're doing the exam. Now, you'll get given a computer calculator on the screen that you can open up and close, but that's a little bit slower than just having it there and being able to type in exactly what you want straight away. And because time is such an issue, that's definitely something that I would have. And my last tip is going to be not necessarily just about R03, but about any of the CII stuff, since we're on the page, is that whenever you're purchasing any of the CII products, I would make sure to do it as kind of soon as you can, as soon as you want to. So if you want to start studying today, then make sure today is either a Monday through Friday, because basically how it works is that when you purchase something on the CII website, you have to wait until someone on their admin team okays the purchase, even though you've already spent the money. It's out of your account, and that can be quite annoying. So I bought one of the, I think it was the audio revision, on the Saturday of the Easter weekend, and because the Easter weekend meant that someone wasn't in the office on Monday, people weren't working on the Monday, I didn't actually get to access the audio files until about 11 a.m. on Tuesday. So really think whenever you purchase it, it's probably going to be, if it's after 5 p.m, it will be about 11 a.m. on the next working day, because that's just the way it works. I don't know why. When it's a digital product, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's not personalized to me, it's just up there for everyone. But there you go. Another little bit of a fault with the CI online platform. I might get to a few more of them, especially around purchasing. But without further ado, we can get into the actual study methods and the cost for each of them. And this is what I did. It's not necessarily what's going to work for you, but it's managed to get me a first time pass for 4 of the exams that I've already sat. I've got 2 more to do. And so I presume I'm going to keep doing something quite similar, apart from the R06 one, which is a little bit different. One that I'll highlight for the R06, it's not a multiple choice exam, and it is not something that can be sat in basically every day of the year when you go on and book any of these exams. For R01 through to R05, if you're doing it online, or even if you're doing it in person, generally it's available a lot of the time online, like pretty much every day and pretty much all hours of the day. Whereas for R06, it's only sat on 4 days in the whole year. So that's something worth thinking about to maybe look onto. If I even just type in here, CII R06 exam date, important exam deadlines, I'm going to go Control F, R06, and if I pop down here, it'll show me when they are. So 21st of April, that is now passed. R06, 30th of June, and it gives you all of the dates for when you need to, in this case, when it's available to book, so it's available to book back in November. When it's the last day that you can book is, so that's about 2 weeks or 15 days beforehand, and when the results are released. So you don't get the results straight away for R06. And the reason I'm bringing it up just now is because it may be something you want to generally aim towards, because it's only once every 3 months. You don't want to find out that you've passed the 5th of your 5 exams on July the 1st, and then you're like, oh, I need to wait until the 6th of October till I sit this exam, unless of course you want a huge break, but generally that is not something that I am looking to do. So if you guys have seen any of my previous videos, you know that I'll have linked to this Personal Finance Society Pathway to the Profession scheme. So the Personal Finance Society is a bit like the CII. This is where you can get your membership to actually get a number of materials from the CII at a cheaper rate, including the exam booking. If we go on to the personal taxation web page and we go into assessment only, we can see that for everything, including the exam setting up here, it's significantly cheaper for members than for non-members. The membership is generally about £80-something if you need to purchase it, but it will pay back for itself when you bought a number of these, and you're going to have to at least buy each of the 6 exam settings ones, and one saving can be about £54 when you take it from the non-member to the member page. Regardless, the PFS offer this Pathway to the Profession scheme, which basically gave out a free R06 qualification, so exam setting study book, and a free student membership for 1 year. Now it's no longer available. I don't know whether or not this is something they're going to open up again in the future, so I'll still link it down in the description of this video, because I have been to a live event like conference before, and they mentioned and they talked about it as if it was something that they might do again in the future, but there is no guarantee. Before, all you have to do is you have to go onto the complete this form, but unfortunately when you go into complete the form now, it's no longer available because they only wanted to open it up, it seems, to the first 500 people, and 500 people have now used it. I'm not sure exactly when they closed it. There wasn't any sort of notification on this page, but that's no longer open, unfortunately. But I'll definitely go back and check if you're going through it at whatever point in the future to see whether or not they've opened up something similar to that, because it saved a hell of a lot of money for anyone to save you buying the exam booking, the study guide if you wanted it, and the membership. It was a few £100s in there. So onto the good part. We're going to go through this, like my study method, in like 3 blocks, just 1, 2 and 3. I'll go through the cost of everything, and let's just get started. So the first block of my study method that's given me a first time pass for the last 4 exams is going to be made up of 3 things. They're each like a little bit different, so you can consume them in different areas and different times of your day. The first one is going to be some video modules, the second is going to be an audio revision guide, and the third is going to be some questions that you can actually complete on your phone. So the first one that I generally try and work through, and this kind of dictates how long I'm actually going to spend on the first module, is just going to be the PlanX videos. So if we want to find a PlanX video, I can just type in PlanX, and it's not this one with the blue icon, it's the other one with the purple. So it's formerly Next Gen Planners. So the URL is a little bit strange. but you can basically add each of the RO modules along with other exams, I believe. But for R03, we'll click on R03, and there are a few different things you can do. So there's a chat function over here, which I don't really make use of, to be honest. I think if people are asking questions, there's no assurance that they are definitely correct. There is one admin on here, a guy called John Dunkley, this guy, who might be able to give you, who in fact will be able to give you the correct answers. But what I mainly use it for is these video modules. So you can see that they're all split up into roughly 3 to 4 weeks. And there are also tutorial shorts, which are good. They basically focus on like one question on one topic. There's only about 10 to 15 of them for each of the RO exams. But I look at them at the end because that's focusing on the questions. The first thing I start on is the actual content of this exam. And this is basically going to take me through it. The first little intro video is the same for all the exams. But apart from that, they're split into maybe somewhere between 1 and say 6 or 7 videos each day. They can range from say a couple of minutes, 13 minutes. If we click on to number 4 randomly, 12 minutes, 13 minutes, 10 minutes. But they can range from anywhere from like 1 minute, and generally they're between 1 and maybe like 35 minutes. There was one exam, I think, for R02 or I think it was R02, the second day was about 75 minutes. That's quite a long one. But generally it's supposed to be about half an hour per day. You don't have to go through them one day at a time. You could go through, say, 5 of these in a day. That wouldn't be unmanageable. I generally get through them in maybe 6 or 7 days. The R03 one, as you can see, is only 22 days. That's actually on the shorter end of things, but I'm not sure how much the total time is. And basically, I'm going to mute it, but if I had to play this video, it will take you through slides and some examples at times of everything you might cover in the study guide. So this is just a much more digestible version of the study guide for me. The cost of this is only £18 per month. Now when you click on the plans where I put this link in, it will come up with a few options. The ones that are £15, those are the ones you want. So I believe trainee, and there's also like something financial advisor, or like trainee financial advisor, trainee power planner. They're all basically the same thing, and you can just add these modules as you go through them. You only seem to have to pay for it once. I believe it's supposed to be a monthly subscription, but I cancelled mine, and then when I went back on it to add it on again, when I went to my second exam, it didn't seem to ask me to pay for it. I just still had access to it, which is great. And I basically went through these in about a week, generally depending upon how busy I am. Once I go through the videos, I'll go through the tutorial shorts, which I can show one of just now. And you can see it basically is just the guy, John Dunkley, who's the admin for these pages, and he just talks through the question and why it's correct or not. These questions, I believe, are taken from the CII mock exam that you get given, and we'll go over that in the third block. So it's pretty good. We're not just going over random questions, we're going over the CII mock paper. Now, as I'm going through that, I'll do that whenever I'm in front of a computer. You can use an app for it called Mighty Networks, which you'll be able to find when you go on to Plan X. So the cost of the Plan X will really just be £18, and that'll be a one-off £18. So I don't even need to add it to my total cost for this exam because I've already paid it once, and I don't seem to need to pay it again, which is great. The value for money here is pretty unmatched. Obviously, if I had to choose one thing that I could only choose one study material, it'd probably be a set of past papers, but bang for your buck, £18 for 6 exams worth of like so many hours worth of content that I would say is pretty good. So I would keep going through those videos. You can do them a little bit every day, and at the same time, what I would do, you could either do it in between when you're watching the videos just to break it up, or just when you're out and about, is I would get the second study material, which is the BTS Study Buddy app. So BTS is just Bespoke Training Solutions. If you type in BTS Study Buddy, it will show up straight away, and you can go onto a login and things like that. If you type in BTS Study App, this will come up for you. I will show you a little example of what it looks like on the screen. And basically for the CII RO exams, not including the R06 because it's not multiple choice, and a few of the other CII exams that we won't cover for the level 4 diploma, you have the option of 2 packs for each exam. R05, I believe it's only 1, and each of the packs cost £55 or £54.99. Now each of these packs contain several hundred questions that you can just go through either module by module. So you can go through, say, module 1 for R03, module 2 for R03, that's generally how I do it, or you can set the full exam all at once, and in that situation You can set it timed or untimed. I've never done that. I don't want to go through 50 or 100 questions all on my phone. I'd be on my phone for quite a long time. Usually I'm on my phone for short bursts of time. Maybe you're sitting on the train for a little bit, or you're just waiting on the bus, or you want to do it in between the Plan X videos when you're at home. Whatever works for you, but when you do it module by module, it means at most you're doing, you're ranging anywhere from maybe like 4 to about 27 questions. I think there's one of the R01 modules which is like 27, but most of the time for R03 especially, you're ranging somewhere between like 4 and 10 questions, which shouldn't take you that long. When you've gone through all the multiple choice questions, some of which will be multiple response, it will then basically tell you why the correct answer is correct and why the incorrect answers are incorrect, and it'll give you a percentage. You can save them as well, so you can see how you've been tracking as time goes on. So it's really been quite useful, the fact that you can just access it on your phone. There isn't really anything else like that, apart from maybe if you were to go through and get some mock papers that were a PDF and just access that on your phone. But like a really nice user-friendly app, there isn't really anything that I've come across. I've been using it for every exam, and I feel like it's really helped me get exposed to the questions quite early on, but to save the actual big mock papers that I have for later on. And the last study material I'm going to cover for block 1 is going to be the CII's own audio module. So if we go back onto the CII R03 webpage, we scroll down, we'll click on assessment only, and it'll show us all of the individual study materials we can buy. There are a few things here. The only ones that I've ever used are the e-learn and the audio revision. The audio revision is the one that I'm going to focus on just now. So if we add it, now it says £48.33, however, when we go on to checkout, it then adds on the VAT, so it's actually £58, a little practice that I don't particularly like from the CII. And if we go on to my CII website, once you've bought it, and again, you'll then have to wait until 11 AM on the next working day before you can even access this, we can scroll down to access revision mate, and it'll show us everything. R04 audio download, R03 audio download. And click on audio files, audio downloads folder, and it'll show us all the audio files. So it's literally just MP3 folders, or not MP3 folders, MP3 files of each of these modules. Now these modules are not exactly in line with the modules that you have for the exam, which is quite annoying. So for example, I know in the R04 exam, which I'm studying for now, module 3, 4 and 5, or 2, 3 and 4 are just one module of the actual exam. They've just broken it up because it's quite a big one, which can be a bit confusing, so just don't worry about the modules, and it's not specifically linked to the modules that you go through. So in short, these are basically not specifically linked to the modules that you have in the exam. So for R03, you click on the personal taxation webpage, you can download the 2025-26 syllabus or exam guide. That's even better. That'll have one past paper that we'll get onto in a minute. But it basically shows you the 4 topics, or the 4 modules, if you will, in this exam. And you can see here there's only 4, but yet in the audio download there's many more, just because they've split it up. Now the first one, as for all of these audio revision guides, you can basically skip. It basically talks about good exam practice, like not wasting your time, answering all the questions, blah blah blah. The 13th one is a crash course of everything. It's a little bit of a summary. And when you get to the end of each of these, they range from between 20 and 45 minutes at a time, or maybe like 15 to 45 minutes. Usually it's about 20 something, 30 something. And they'll give you maybe 2 or 3 questions at the end, just after a little bit of a summary of what they've gone over in that specific audio file. And you can basically listen to that anywhere. Of course, you can listen to it in the gym, walking around. You could listen to it at home if you're just a bit, if you want to study but you don't want to do the study app questions or the Plan X videos. But when I start going through these, I won't have completed these by the time I go through the personal taxation Plan X videos. However, when I go through all of these Plan X videos, I will finish them and I won't go over them. At that point, that's when I now move on to block 2. But I will still continue in block 2 to keep going over the BTS study app questions and the audio revision guide. I will keep going over both of them all the way until I get to the exam, because there's nothing else there's no other audio guide, there's no other study app option, so I can keep going through them in the times of my day when I feel like I want to be on my phone to do the app questions, or if I'm driving in the car or on the bus or whatever, and I can listen to something through an audio guide. So moving on to block number 2, now that I've got through these Plan X videos, and we can basically say bye-bye to all of them, this is now when I would go on and I would make my exam booking. So if we go on to the CII R03 page and we scroll down, we can click on assessment only. Now you can go into enrollment only and enrollment plus, but that basically gives you a multitude of these other study options on top of your exam, and I've always bought them separately. So you can basically go on, you can add this to your basket. I can take away the audio revision, 146, and it actually stays at 146. So I'm not sure why it stays at 146 and doesn't add on VAT for the exam, but it does it for all of these. But anyway, 146 is what the exam is going to cost you. So at that point, you can then book it, particularly if you've already done this for another exam before. You might know how far in advance. I went and booked it maybe 2 to 3 weeks in advance, so I knew that in 2 or 3 weeks I'm going to really lock in. I know that I have the time to do this, and it's worked for me previously. And generally, once you book your exam, you now properly start to get into it, because you now get no excuse, because you know you've got an exam in a few weeks' time. This will obviously be dependent upon when you can make it and when you can find an available exam booking. But again, like I said before, if you do it online in your house or wherever you can online, in a quiet space, then you'll probably have way more options. You'll definitely have way more options than if you do it in person. So the only other thing in this second block, which is the only actual study material in this block, is going to be the CII eLearn module. Now, if we, well, it's actually on this page, if we scroll down here and we go on to the eLearn module, we can see here it's listed as 50, but if we go on to checkout, it's actually going to be 60. If you purchase it, you'll get it the next working day at 11 AM. I'll show you a little bit about what the R03 eLearn looks like if we go on to it. There is something that's good to know. I don't think I've actually mentioned it before in any other videos. You get given a random assortment of about 30 questions, which are like, I guess, like CII exam type questions. So it's the same set of questions, and you can come back to it. As you can see, it did not take me 17 hours to do it, but I evidently just closed the laptop and came back to it later. But it says attempt 1, attempt 2, because it's only the same 30 questions, but it's 30 extra questions you can access that are given from the CII. So I go to reattempt the quiz. You can see here what they roughly look like. And it will also give you a bit of a description once we get through all of them at the end as to why this was the correct answer. So that's something that's worth knowing when you get the eLearn module. Before the actual eLearn module, we click on it and we go into online course. R03, but the second module, to enter. If we go back to the start, it'll give us a little percentage completion of how far we've gone through with everything, which is a little bit vague. But it's basically a really compressed version of what you might get in the study textbook. This is really enjoyable. This is probably the most enjoyable part of the whole study experience for me. I really like the way they put it together. They change it up between bullet points and questions and different windows. There's some questions as well, and whether or not you get it right, they will give you, oh my goodness, by pure chance, got it right. They'll tell you why it's right, and if it's wrong, they'll tell you what the correct answer would be. And you basically click through each of the modules, and again, this has been split up into 10 modules, even though there's only 4 modules in the R03 exam. However, it doesn't really matter. You're going through it, and you can get through this within a few days, a bit quicker than the Plan X videos, because obviously there isn't as much content in it. But it's split up into a much more digestible format. And there are some things that are covered here that, even though they go over in the audio guide and in the Plan X videos, that just it sinks in a little bit more when it's in a different format. So this will basically replace the Plan X videos with the next thing that I'm going to do on a computer, and I can still continue to do the BTS Study App questions and the audio revision guide stuff at the same time. So yeah, definitely a real worthwhile purchase in my opinion, even though it is a little bit more costly. This then takes me on to the third and final block, which will probably be maybe the last few weeks, whether it be a week or 2 or 3 before your exam, we get into the proper sort of questions. Now, I've already been going over the BTS Study App questions, but now we're going to get to the point where we're doing like the papers. So this is where things start to change a little bit for me. Now, usually what I would have done is I would have recommended you guys to go onto the NoRO webpage and to get the R03 mock exams, as I have done for all of the other examinations. Now, this is basically a little online portal on the NoRO webpage. They're pretty cheap, so basically you get these exams and they're either somewhere between, I think it's about 20, 25 or 30 pounds, so they're quite cheap. And you get 3 full papers of, I guess, 50 questions or 100 questions, and it'll be set up pretty much like the actual exam. and you'll click through them all, and you'll choose your answer, and when you get to the end, it will then give you an answer for each of them. And an answer will basically come up the exact same, and it will come up in a little box on the right hand side, usually out of the way, not always out of the way, because unfortunately that's one of the little things about this web interface that is a little bit glitchy, and it kind of comes off as if, yes, it is only a £25 product, it is a little bit cheaper than the rest of them, even though it is quite valuable. Now, over the last 4 exams, I have been doing these every time, so I've bought 4 of these no RO paper packages, and I've been getting to the point where I've been feeling that these are just significantly more, or maybe not significantly more difficult, but they're definitely more difficult than the CII mock exam papers that you can get. Therefore, every time I've done one of these papers, I've been getting a mark that is significantly lower than what I eventually get in the CII mock paper exams. That's not a great confidence builder, especially when they're already hard. To be honest, I think one of the papers for the R03, and it might have been the very first one I did, I went and got, like, after doing all the Plan X videos, BTS study app questions, audio revision, and the e-learning module, I was getting like 30 something%, even though I need to get like 60 plus, and I was like, man, usually I'm starting off at like 50% for these the first time I do it, and then I work my up to like 70s, 60s, and then 70s and so on to get a passing mark. But starting off at like 30 for the first one, that's really worrying. So what I did then at that point, I was like, man, these feel like really tough questions. This is the first paper I've properly done. I went and then did one of the CII R03 papers that you get. So you get one of them. Here, download the 2025-26 exam guide, which is a little bit of info, and then it's actually one of the papers. So this is the second thing that I would normally have done alongside doing the no RO papers. I basically just went back and forth between a no RO paper and an actual CII mock paper. Now, you only get given one of these, but if you go on Google, you can generally find 1 or 2 more from older years. You just need to check the tax tables will be a little bit different because these rates are for 2025, 2026, and if you find an older one, the tax rates may have changed a little bit, the dividend rates may have changed a little bit, etc, etc. And I went and did one of these, and I ended up getting something like in the 50s. It was definitely a lot higher, and so I'm like, man, this is really not making me feel very confident going through these no RO questions, as well as the fact that it's a little bit glitchy. And when you sit the exam, you start timing it, you need to finish it by the time the timer finishes. Otherwise, it just stops you, and it gives you a mark of, say, let's say you get 50% and it says pass rate 65%, even though the pass rate is actually 64%. So due to my growing distaste with the no RO, I went and sought something else that was quite similar, because there's only 2 or 3 CII mock papers that you can actually find online, one of them being on the actual website itself, this one here. So I went and looked at another few options, and one that I found was on Brand FT, so Brand Financial Training. They do a few little YouTube videos, so if you go onto YouTube and type in CII R03, for example, Brand come up here, and they go through in little bite-sized chunks a few of the topics, so you can basically just scroll through and look through any of them that have R03 in the title, and that might be a little bit of a boost to you. There's only generally like 5 to 10 of them available, but they also do mock papers, so they have a few different options. This study kit is basically everything put together. They have revision notes, they have a calculation workbook, and they have the mock exam paper. So you can get them like as an online version, or you can get the actual PDF. That's the one that I went for. So it looks very much like the CII ones. They have a little bit of description, and then they just have questions. They have the answers at the end, just like the CII ones, and they're a little bit more similar to the CII ones, and that for the multiple response questions, there are only a certain amount, a small amount, that have 3 responses here. So you can see out of the last 11 questions that are multiple response, 2 of them have 3 options, and the rest of them only have 2 options. Whereas in no RO, sometimes you can get an option here where like 5 of them are 3 option questions. And if I go on to the actual CII mock paper exam, which is the most relevant to us, there's only 2 of them that have the 3 questions. Whereas in previous videos I've shown a little bit more clearly, like in the R02 video, that no RO papers are a little bit further off of what the marking is like, particularly in regards to these multiple response questions you get near the end of some of the exams. So I basically got these as an addition to the no RO papers, and the CII papers because I felt like I needed extra papers because I was really struggling. Even when I got onto the CII papers, my marks were better than when I was doing the no RO papers, but it was still really quite tough. So yeah, I would highly recommend these Brand Financial training mock papers. You'll get 3 of them for £45, which I still feel like, given the fact that there's not many things out there like this. You know, you can go for the no RO ones, which are a bit cheaper, but guess what? They're cheaper and they're not quite as good in my opinion. Having used Brand FT ones in no RO 4 times, I can say at least for this one exam that these were a lot better. And one huge bonus about the Brand FT papers as compared to just the CII ones, even though it's not from the CII, you get the answers, sure, great, but you also get a bit of an explanation. Now I will say that I would probably go and Google the question a little bit more for a further explanation on some of them, because you can see the explanation can be quite short. Sometimes you only need it to be quite short because it's quite an easy one to understand once you get it. And some of them are a little bit meatier, especially once it gets into the calculations. But that's really good to have, because the CII paper, unfortunately, doesn't give you any sort of descriptor as to why these are correct and why they aren't. That's the only thing why I might consider going back to the mock exams from no RO, because when you buy this package, it actually gives you one of the old CII papers as a PDF. The answers, or at least no RO's answers to menu options. Click on here. See, it's kind of glitching out, like I'm scrolling down, I'm trying to use it. CII exam guide, and it gives you the answers to them, which is quite useful. So maybe you think about purchasing no RO papers just for the explanations to the CII papers if you feel like you're quite close to passing and not passing, or if maybe you've not passed one time and you want to go back and you're thinking, oh, what else can I do? Well, I can actually go back and understand what is in the CII mock papers that you get online, because they don't give you the answers in any sort of detail. They just give you the ABCD, which is a bit unfortunate. So once I've gone through the 3 of them, I will basically do that up to the run up of the exam. I generally like to just go over them once, because when you go over them a second time, you already know the answers, and so your mark will get better, but it's not really reflective of what it'll be like in the exam, because you're not going to have already gone over one of those questions. You're going to get a brand new question in the exam. So that covers everything from the 3 study blocks that I've gone over. In short, the costs added up for block 1 were the Plan X for £18, the CII audio revision was £58, and the BTS study app question was £55 per pack. You can get 2 of those packs if you want. I have only ever gotten one of them. And the Plan X, £18, you only have to pay for once, which is helpful. You do need to, of course, get your CII membership as well as a one-time purchase. The exam booking in block number 2 is £146, and the CII eLearn is £60. And in block 3, if you want to make use of the no RO ones, I would say if you're going to get rid of anything, it would be those. But for CII R03 exam, it's a £25 purchase. For the Brand FT PDF papers, it's £45. And for the CII papers that you can get one for free on this page, if you purchase the no RO package, then you'll get generally one for free as like an add-on. Most of the time, I think for the 4 exams I've purchased, I've got the previous year's paper, so in my case 2024 and 2025 paper. And if you go and Google CII R03 past papers, then you might be able to find them downloaded somewhere online. So there's an examination guide for 2025, 26. That is this year, so it's not really helpful, but you may be able to find some older papers as well. So those are the exact materials and costs that I went through to pass my R03 exam. Again, like I said, this is a tough exam, so if you had to go through this and you weren't to pass it first time, then perhaps you can go and make use of some of the materials in this video that I have discussed if you haven't already purchased them. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if very capable people didn't pass it first time, because I passed it by the skin of my backside, to say the least. I'm not sure what the circumstances are. If you were to fail one of the exams, I believe you have to wait maybe like 7 days or something like that before you can book it again. But I would just get it booked again and get back into it. That would be my personal advice, but I can imagine it's quite deflating to have to go through that. At least when you eventually do pass it, that's you passed it. You never need to do it again. So if anyone has any questions, whether it be about the study materials, even if it's something kind of separate, like to do with getting yourself into a financial advice firm or going through the academy route, let me know. I can give you my thoughts. I'm more than happy to comment below, or if you want to message me in the email that I can leave or my LinkedIn, then do that. Otherwise, see you around.